What's up, everyone? We are talking injuries today. We want to know, what is your most annoying injury? Well, at least those of you that are watching live on the UMS Movement Mastermind, we're going to be talking about those injuries, our experiences with them, and how you can overcome them and make sure they never happen again. Stick around.
What's up, tribe? My name's Yanni Burmeister. I am joined by my brother Rad across the table, and behind the camera is Richie. We are Unity Gym and the Unify Movement System. Quickly before we get started, if you guys want to know any of our secrets about training, nutrition, you can grab the blueprints. We give all the best stuff away for free. You can download them in the description. If you're watching a replay, the guys in the Facebook group can just request them and we'll send them to you. Maybe, I don't know, how do they get them?
yeah, they can request them. And I mean, look, if they, you can go to our website.
Yeah, okay,
that's it. Go to unitygym.com. They're all there. Just grab one, download it.
Today we're talking injuries. Now, last week we talked a lot about bulletproofing your body. We talked about developing a solid foundation, injury proofing, so to speak. But what happens if you haven't done our Epic Foundations program? What happens if you just missed the flash sale and you've just, is there hope for you? Is there hope? Well, I'm here to tell you there is, but it's, you know, injuries are a really funny sort of thing to approach, because a lot of injuries that you occur in the gym, you don't fix them the way most people think. And the old-fashioned adage of just take some time off and give it a rest can actually be quite detrimental. There's a very new method of sort of treating injuries, and Phil sort of tipped on that yesterday, which has completely changed the old RICE concept of rest, ice, what was it? Rest,
ice, compression,
elevation. And it's very, very different now. It's very different. You know, we used to be told to take anti-inflammatories. We now know that that is really, really wrong. Well, our body, we want that inflammatory response. That inflammatory response is the healing response kicking in. And taking anti-inflammatories the moment we feel pain or discomfort completely stifles, it blocks the healing mechanism. You know, we're going to go into that and into the theory a little bit deeper tomorrow and Friday. But today I want to open a discussion about what the most common or most frustrating injury is that you've ever had in the gym, and we'll see if we can direct this conversation to just giving some value to the tribe, because Rad, Richard and myself, between the three of us, we've experienced it all, and we've had to overcome some pretty horrific injuries, from breaking our back, like literally fracturing our spine, to dislocating our knees, dislocating our shoulders, and everything in between. Lots of broken bones, lots of torn ligaments, lots of torn meniscus in the knees.
Oh man, we've had it all.
We've done everything. We've pushed our bodies to the absolute limit.
Like, we haven't done it all, but we've done a lot of the bad stuff. A lot of the bad stuff that people suffer with. I mean, you know, I think one of the biggest ones that a lot of people suffer with, that this new way of doing things that Phil's looking at there. That's awesome, Richie. If you want to just leave that up there, leave that up there for us.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's tendinopathy. You know, like resting tendinopathy is like the worst thing that you can do. But yeah, tell us what you've had. Let's get some people out there. We've got a lot of people on the live stream here. What's the most? What's the worst?
We've got a few people sharing already. We're going to give it a few minutes, and we'll just pre-frame this, because between our experiences, and we'll give you a little bit of backstory today. This will be fun, because a lot of you guys don't know us that well. First and foremost, Rad and I grew up in the country on 500 acres, which to those of you among us who are farmers, it probably seems pretty small, but it was a lot of great fun growing up. One of the privileges I had for a while was that I used to ride a horse to work, albeit sort of under the supervision of my mother. We had 3 horses on the farm, and we all had our own horse. I used to ride Rad's horse because my horse was just nuts. And yeah, for quite a period, whilst I was really, really dialing in my riding skills, I used to ride along a gravel road to and from school, which was about probably only about a 10 kilometre, maybe 5 or 10 kilometre ride.
From where?
From home to school, would it have been?
In Kalang?
Yeah.
Would have been about 2 kilometres, but we were
really?
we were kids. I've been up
right.
there
okay.
recently. It's
it
about
very,
2
very
kilometres.
Short, yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
But we were kids, so yeah.
There you go. And so, yeah, and it was beautiful. You know, the school had paddocks and things like that, and we had a river running through it, and we used to go swimming at lunchtimes, and it was just great. Anyway, shortly after the horse gave birth to a foal, which was meant to become my horse, I was riding home one day.
It's good when it was
I was riding home one day, and my horse just went nuts because it heard the foal had escaped from the paddock. And long story short, the horse bolted on me, and I was only, geez, how old was I? 8 years old, I think.
Younger than that, man.
6, maybe 6. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have been 6.
Yeah, and I was incapable of pulling the horse up, and I ended up coming out of the saddle, sort of trying to bail actually, and my foot got caught in the stirrup, and I got dragged, and it was pretty horrible because it was on a gravel road, so I had really bad gravel rash. I've still got scarring on my right arm from that. And it caused quite an unusual compound. What is it? It's called a spiral fracture to 2 of the vertebrae in my spine because I was twisting and compressing at the same time as the horse was galloping down the road, and it caused all sorts of injuries. It was pretty horrible, and so that was my first big experience of injury as a child. And there was a lot along the way from there. Rad had a similar experience. He was, for those of you who don't know, Rad and Richie actually met whilst serving as infantry soldiers in the Australian Defence Forces in the Army. And you guys went through basic together, did you?
No, we were in what's called sister platoons, which means every 2 weeks in basic training they start 2 sister platoons, and you go through the entire training curriculum at exactly the same time, which means that whenever you go out to the shooting range, you're there together. Whenever you do your PT sessions, you're next to each other. So you're doing the curriculum at the exact same time. You eat at the same times, and then you graduate on the same day. And then from those 2 platoons, everybody that was joining infantry went to infantry school together in Singleton, and then we got shipped to Townsville, which is where we did our basic training because we went straight to East Timor on deployment. And we were still in, once we got to basic training, we were in the same platoon, but we were in different sections. And when you're in different sections, you don't really mingle with people from, like, you do everything together in the platoon, but when you go out in the field and you're actually working, you're not working with those people. So we never actually really, we were there together all the time, but for the first probably year and a half, we never said more to each other than hi or anything like that. But when we were in East Timor and we were coming back home to Australia, and one of my good mates from my section, Lil, him and I had already organised a home to live in. We'd signed a lease while we were in East Timor without even seeing the place, and we had a spare room. It was a 3-bedroom place, and Richie didn't have anywhere to stay, and we offered him a room, and that's how we became buddies.
You pulled him off the street.
Pulled him off the street.
My God.
We saved him. Literally, because he would have got off the plane and had to go and sleep back in those horrible bunks back at the lines. Hey, Richie, if you didn't have didn't have that place to stay in.
Memories.
Fond memories. And that's how the dream began. And that's how the dream began. And Richie, I don't know whether he doesn't talk about it much, but he did a deployment in Afghanistan. Was that right?
Yep. He was.
Yep.
He did.
And I don't know where I got this from, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but I heard that it was fairly common whilst on deployment when you guys were on patrol for people to fall over and hurt themselves. Like there was a lot of back injuries and stuff like that.
Richard got a Purple Heart for that. He, actually, he was awarded a Purple Heart. He got the Medal of Honor as well because he regained from the fall so well.
Really?
No, they're both American medals. I'm making a joke. I think a Purple Heart is what American soldiers are awarded if they die. Is it like that?
No, it's when they're injured.
When they're injured.
When
the
they're
Medal of Honor is
combat.
the highest award that you can get in the American military. So it's a joke to any of our American military friends. I'm just making a joke.
So just to clear up if I'm correct or wrong, is that right, Richard? It's fairly common because you're carrying so much gear.
Yeah. The patrols are pretty crazy. Like, not only do you have the chance of getting shot at or blown up, but you're navigating pretty treacherous terrain. Treacherous terrain. There was times where, would be like literally climbing on cliffs with no support, no safety, with 30 kilos on your back. So the chances of you falling off, rolling down this hill and like killing yourself was actually possible. I had a friend that was walking along one of these little ledges that they build as like an aqueduct in Afghanistan, and he the ground gave way underneath his feet, and he fell like a good 3 meters down onto his back. And luckily he had a radio between him and the rock he landed on, because that kind of softened the blow, and he crushed the radio. But he had to chop it out of that situation. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And just to give some idea, the guys are carrying how much weight a fully loaded infantry soldier?
Well, it depends on what your deployment is and what your exercise is. The worst I have carried was on my back. My pack was probably about 40 kilos, and then plus my body armor and webbing and rifle, it would have been about 65 kilos or something like that. One of our friends, Wicco, it was one of the smallest dudes in the platoon. He would have weighed about 70 kilos. He weighed himself with all his gear before we went on this patrol, and he had 75 kilos of weight on him, and he only weighed 70 kilos. And we had to pack march for pretty much 5 days through swamps and like horrible stuff, like just walking.
So just to rewind there, so the average weight that you'd carry on these deployments when you're hoofing it on the ground would be around, would you say, 50 to 70 kilos?
No,
I'd say
on average. That's pretty extreme, Rad. That was like...
Yeah, that was. But he asked what was the most.
What's the average weight, he said. Average 50. Weight is probably 30 to 40 kilos.
30 to 40 kilos. And how many Ks would you do in one day with that amount of weight on your back?
Most I've done is 39 in a day.
39 kilometres. Jesus. So just to give you guys an idea, like if you can imagine the type of stress and strain that puts on the body, I mean, this is why they train so hard, but it's pretty intense. So they get injuries a lot. Rad had an experience that caused him quite a lot of problems. Why don't you explain that?
Yeah, we were doing a live fire exercise at night time, which means it's no, it wasn't a live fire, it was a blank fire exercise. At night time, and terrain in East Timor is so weird. It's so weird because it's in the tropics. I expected it to be like jungle, and it's like that in some spots, but in other spots it's almost like a desert. It's really weird. It's like this totally dry, hard, muddy stuff, because when it rains in the wet season, it just rains with so much that I guess it turns the ground into almost like mud. But it's like this really dry, dusty ground with little shrubs everywhere, and then maybe only a tree that's, of a really small sized tree, like probably every 5 meters. Like it wasn't like the jungle that I was expecting to go in. And anyway, and every now and then there's these like caverns that are just carved out of the ground from the wet season, because it rains so fiercely that it just carves the ground out. And they're like, the one that I fell in was probably about, 5 feet wide and about 10 feet deep. And because it was nighttime and you're using these fucking night vision goggles, and they fog up because you're so sweaty. It's like 40 degrees Celsius. So I don't even know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's 100% humidity. And these night vision goggles fog up and you can't see anything. And you're trying to look through this stupid night vision thing. And you dive into the ground and shooting, and then you've got to stand up and you've got to run a little bit, and then you dive to the ground, and that's called firing and moving in infantry. And I stood up and ran and just fell straight down one of these ravines, and we were wearing the worst body armor back then. The body armor itself weighed, how much did that McBass weigh? Was it 35 kilos or 25?
It was pretty bulky, I can't remember, but yeah,
it was about 30 kilos of body armor. And then with water and ammunition and everything, and my rifle.
Was that when you guys were asked to test the new body armor?
Oh, God, yes, we did. We tested the new body armor that never made it because it was so bulky and so big, and we had to wear it for 9 months. But anyway, it was like being like a turtle. It was insane. And so I think I would have had about 40 kilos of weight on me, and I just fell down this 10-foot ravine without, like, it's one of those falls. It's like if anybody's fallen, like you can fall down one step, but if you didn't notice that step was there, that can be a really bad fall, whereas you could fall down 3 or 4 steps. But if you get to see that you're about to fall down the 3 or 4 steps, your body gets ready for it. Well, I didn't see it at all. It was nighttime, and I'm looking at what I thought was flat ground, and I jumped up and ran and just went bang down this 10-foot ravine. And I suffered something called a pars defect, which is also known as a pars fracture in the lumbar in the L4 and L5, which also created something called spondylolisthesis in my back. And that was pretty nasty. A lot of pain.
So those are the extremes of our injury history. But then, you know, we've suffered pretty bad gym injuries too. Both acute, which is sort of something that happens usually from one abusive load or a couple of abusive loads, to overuse stuff, which is from, as it sounds, doing something repetitively over and over again, causing stress to the body. And so,
in the last 5 years alone, I've torn my medial meniscus, had a slap tear and a torn supraspinatus in the shoulder, and golfer's elbow and tennis elbow, so forearm tendinopathy. And those were probably the worst ones to get over.
The most annoying.
When I didn't know how to deal with it. Now that I know what to do with it, it's actually not that bad, but not knowing, that was the worst.
And Richie's, what would you think is more frustrating between your forearm tendinopathy or your knee patella?
Well, they're all very similar, like all tendinopathy, you know, issues. So I'd probably say the tendinopathy issues are the most frustrating I've encountered, just because it's reoccurring. You know, you feel like you're never really getting rid of it. You're managing the pain and you're getting better, but then it seems to come back eventually, depending on how you're training, your intensity and everything. So for me, it's the tendinopathy issues. And I've had it both in my forearm and my knee. Knees.
And so, and I have experienced the same. I haven't had a tendinopathy in the knee, but I've experienced it in both of my forearms, both on the medial and lateral epicondyle, which is the inner and outer part of the forearm. I'm dealing with some sort of an acute or even overuse injury in my right elbow at the moment, both in the top bicep and in the forearm. And that came from an acute single dosage of stupidity, which was picking up my 2 kids and my wife and trying to carry them into the kids' bedroom when it was bedtime. And it was.
What does your fiance think about you picking up your wife?
We just say wife and husband. It's just easier. We were meant to get married pretty much this year, and because of everything that's going on, we're sort of delaying the process. But I wear the ring. Anyway,
so should we go through some of these injuries that our members
absolutely. We've got some crackers here.
Alex Benisato's dislocated his shoulder. Is saying is that one of the most frustrating injuries you've had, man?
Alex, I'd like to know whether that's a recurring dislocation due to a shallow labrum, or whether it's a once-off that you did, and what you damaged if you did it.
Well, that's the biggest problem with a dislocated shoulder, is that the joint becomes compromised forever after, and it becomes susceptible to dislocation. Which actually means that the rehabilitation and the recovery from it is quite simple. It's strengthen the muscles as much as possible and try to limit the range of motion, whereas everybody else is trying to create strength through range of motion. Do not create a range of motion without real stability and strength. So really simply put, Alex, the UMS Foundations program that you're doing is going to be the best thing that you can do, man. You just need to make that shoulder as strong as possible, man. And every facet of it that a lot of other programs don't recognize. So horizontal and vertical pushing and pulling, but also external rotation
and internal rotation
and scapular stabilization, like control. The trap 3 raise and the power raises and stuff.
And then the final frontier for you is anti-stabilization training, which I wouldn't do too early on.
No, but it comes in phase 3, the inverted kettlebell press. So it's all there. It's all part of the Foundations program.
That's really good.
So Vinny's saying, in general, the most frustrating injury is one I've gotten due to poor load management. Most recently, that was a hip, and he's saying a hip flexor in question mark strain that came from trying to train middle splits more than twice per week. Healed now, and I'm back on track with the at-home workouts combined with the flexibility masterclass. And that is a perfect example of why we say don't do the middle splits more than once a week.
Yeah.
It just puts, like, as in, not mobility. You can do daily mobility. You can take your body to your comfortable range of motion daily, and that's a really good thing. But training to increase your range of motion with middle splits, don't do it more than once a week. It's full on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin Lee is saying adductor tendinopathy at the hip insertion point from overdoing the middle splits. So that's right up in the hip joint on the inside of the leg. Did it back in April. The pain science element stuck around for quite a while and has only mostly disappeared just recently. Seems I'm a slow learner for injuring myself when it comes to middle splits, but feels 2 for 2 now in fixing me up. Yeah, dude. Again, Kevin's old middle splits.
Kevin's graced by the ability to be able to come and actually work with Phil here in the gym. He's been in here a couple of times.
Yep.
And he is, super lucky.
Yep. Yep.
So it's great to see. It's great to hear that you're overcoming those, and it's again reinforcing what we teach here. And we get into so many trolling arguments online about this, and it's just so funny. People arguing that to get the middle splits, you need to do it every day, over and over and over again. And the reality is that the middle splits is the one movement, the one stretch that is really demanding on the body, demanding on the connective tissues on the inner part of the knee, demanding on the connective tissues in the hip and groin, and it's just not one to push more than once a week. Like you want to really go for it once a week, and then you need to recover.
And everybody that we've spoken to that tries to argue this against us, they're all people that got flexible when they were kids.
Yeah.
And they don't get that it is not how it works for adults.
Yeah.
And Yanni and Richard and I are speaking from a place of authority on this one. We've been stretching now for about 5 years, and everything that we've got that is notable to do with flexibility came in the last 5 years, so in our late 30s and early 40s. So we can honestly say and not only that, but we've created those same results with hundreds of our members, not only around the world, but in the gym. So watch out with that. Watch out with overdoing your stretching. And if anybody tries to tell you otherwise, say, it's so funny. People say, that's ridiculous. You got to stretch every day to do the middle splits. I could do the splits when I was 4 and I've been doing it all my life. And you're like,
yeah, that's why you can stretch every day.
That's why you can do it, mate.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
David Clark is saying, dislocating my knee during a Taekwondo lesson. It took about 4 to 6 months before I fully recovered and got my confidence back. Yeah, dislocating your knee.
I get chills down my spine whenever I hear dislocating the knee. That's probably above and beyond the horse riding accident, which happened so long ago that I don't really remember the pain as much. But my most recent really disgusting injury was getting tackled in the side of my leg and my knee being dislocated playing footy, and it was horrible. It was horrible. The feeling of standing up and trying to run because you're in shock and you don't really know how severe the injury was, and then your knee just bending to the side and giving out was just quite awful.
Dave, are you the one on the left or right of your profile picture? Is that you in the white gi or in the black shirt? And if it's not, that dude in the black shirt, that looks like that actor that plays the bad guys in all the Donnie Yen movies.
Bring the comment up again.
Bring the comment up
and
again.
And you should get rid of the other logos when you bring these comments up, Richie.
He's I can't remember the dude's name. Let me know, Dave. Let me know if that's the right person and that's who I'm thinking of. Alex Benasato is saying...
I think he's in the white. I think Dave's the one in the white.
I get the feeling that is, but if that's the case, I'm thinking that... I can't remember the dude's name. It's on the tip of my tongue.
He's saying left. He's saying left, yeah.
So who's the dude on the right in that picture? Is that an actor? Is that a movie actor?
Our right,
yeah. Scott Atkins, I knew it. Yeah, awesome. So you've trained with him, huh? He's Scott Atkins, Yanni, is the dude that was the bad guy in Yip Man. He was remember the boxer that beats the crap out? Yeah. He's a great martial artist. He's a really good awesome. Love Scott Atkins. Love Donnie Yen and all the kung fu movies. So that's very cool. Does Scott Atkins do Taekwondo? Is that his primary martial art? Dave, let me know. So Alex is saying it was a boxing injury, happened about 10 years ago, but I still feel it on my right side, shoulder blade, neck every so often. Yeah, man.
One of the more frustrating injuries I sustained, which was actually what led me to hang up my gloves once and for all, was a really bad perforation of my tricep, the long head of my tricep tendon. from an air swing where I got really frustrated in a sparring match when I was outclassed by someone much taller than me, and he was just picking me apart with the most annoying jab you'd ever seen. It wasn't even a fast jab, it was just that his arm was so damn long that I couldn't get inside it. And I just sent a Hail Mary overhand right that he just perfectly slipped, and I just didn't. It was just so silly, and it completely stuffed my tricep and tore my tricep tendon. Oh, man. Almost dislocated my elbow. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
The worst injury Yanni's ever had, though, is when he's pulled his heartledge.
Shut
really
up.
Stopped him from
shut up.
Going.
I got a quick shout out here. I've got Alex Jenno, who is my brother-in-law, has just, theoretically, if we were married, my brother-in-law has tuned in all the way from Perth over there. Welcome, brother. Alex has recently grabbed our 18-minute stretch routine.
Ooh, stop it.
Yeah, I know. The start of all of our journeys. And he's saying TFCC tear in the wrist from snowboarding. You and your sister have a thing with wrists. And that is actually something I'm dealing with right now. I started to box again just to try and cut a bit of weight. And yeah, I'm punching much harder than my hands and wrists can handle.
One of our members, Yuri, yesterday. I have to speak to him today to clarify if that's what it was, but we're pretty sure that he popped an old cyst in his wrist yesterday doing front squats, because he had a cyst in his wrist for however long. I'd never known about it, and he went to do his front squats, and he felt this feeling, and he was like, oh man, and it didn't feel great for him. But the way that he was describing it, he goes, I think I just popped a cyst. And I said, you probably did, man. I said, that's pretty cool. That's pretty lucky. You would have had to go to the doctor and get the old phone book on the hand otherwise.
Get it sucked out. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So who else have we got here? Lee Clements is saying I had sore left hip flexor. Again, guessing. Reading above will cut back on the pancake to once, not twice a week. Recent aggravation. Look,
I don't think that that's necessary, because a hip flexor is not going to be affected too much in the pancake. It's going to be activated if you're pulling into the pancake a lot.
It's not, but that said, this is she's got a question mark here saying, hip flexor, not sure if that's what it is.
I see, yeah.
I think it is important to say, though, that in all honesty, you can get a really good result with flexibility from training the one movement once a week, if you do mobility daily, and when you understand what the difference between flexibility and mobility training is. And if you don't know what it is, we've got a great mobility routine, the 18-minute mobility routine, and then we've got the flexibility masterclass, which are very, very different. But you can, if you're getting recurring injuries or things that are hurting from doing stretching, then the first thing that I would say is dial back the frequency.
Yeah.
Just do it once a week and do daily gentle mobility and see how that works for you.
Yeah. Because
that's often what happens. And the further and further I get with my flexibility training, and the more I work with my coach, with Joachim, the more I'm realizing that frequency does not need to be as high as what people think it is, and recovery is really important.
Well, you've got to remember, going at it really, really hard more than once a week, you're still training with the notion that your body's somehow Play-Doh and that you can just stretch it out and it's going to be elongated. It doesn't work that way. Remember, you're trying to change the way your brain perceives your movement capability, and if you are fighting a brain that's held on to restricted movement for a whole lifetime, decades of inflexibility, it's going to take time for your brain to sort of go, okay, I am okay with going to this new range of movement, and beating it harder with a harder stick. By that I mean stretching harder more often won't do it. It's the exact opposite that will get you flexible, because you're going to stifle the process by experiencing pain, tearing something, and reinforcing to the brain that no, it shouldn't allow you to go there, because you keep hurting yourself when you do.
Yep.
So it's really important that people understand, especially with flexibility training, that you've got to progress slowly. And I'll say this for Alex Jenno, my brother over in Perth, who's jumped onto the 18-minute routine. And it's probably your first introduction, I'm assuming, to flexibility training. And he's doing it because he's experiencing a little bit of discomfort in the lower back. I think I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. It's just got to be a you gotta take a progressive long-term approach. You know, it's just about showing up, doing the work, embrace the process, build it into a habit, a ritual, a daily ritual that you're going to be able to do. The good thing with the 18-minute routine is you can do it every day because it's more of a mobility routine than a stretching routine. And that's how we did it. We did it every day for probably 2 years, you know, because it was our warm-up for a while.
I still think if you were going to get started on flexibility training, even though we've now got the 18-minute mobility routine, I still think that if you were going to start your flexibility journey and you wanted something that you could just get started with that was really going to make a big impact, that routine is the best thing that you could possibly do.
Yeah, 100%.
Without a doubt. Because it takes care of more of the body than the 18-minute mobility routine does. The 18-minute mobility routine doesn't do as much in the upper body. It's not designed for that.
Yeah.
But the 18-minute stretching routine is just so good for everything, man.
Yeah,
it
covers
It
everything.
hits everything a little bit.
Although it feels a little bit overwhelming at the start with some of the movements, it's a fairly nice introduction to flexibility training. You know, and if you just persevere with that and do it for, you know, you could do it for quite some time and still get a really great result. You know, you're not going to need to change anything for a while, but it's just about building a habit of doing it every day. Every day or every other day as much as you can, and you'll see a huge result.
Anyway, we're definitely out of time, Yanni, but let's this is a conversation that we're going to continue this week. Okay, we're going to be talking about injuries and your injuries and our injuries and our experience and how we can help you with. So help us out. Put some questions put them directly in the UMS Movement Mastermind. Don't put them as comments on this video. Tag us in them. Anything about injuries that you want to know, and let's talk about them.
Yeah. Tomorrow and Friday we're going to wrap the series up with Phil, and so we'll have our physio on around the table as well, and we can go deep. You know, how deep is up to you guys. Get your most annoying injury, something that you might even you might be dealing with, or it keeps coming back, it keeps recurring, things like that. For myself, it's definitely my forearm tendinopathy. As Richard said before, we call forearm tendinopathy in the gym herpes, because it's quite difficult to completely fix. You can certainly win with having it, which we do. I still do it. That doesn't stop me doing anything. But from time to time, I have to alter the course of my direction because I feel it again, you know. And Richie, definitely, I hear him talking about that as well. Maybe some of you guys can relate. So we'll talk a bit about that and a bit about our experience, because I believe that that's one of the most common and most frustrating gym injuries that you can sustain. Tendinopathy in the shoulder, in the rotator cuff, is another one, or acute issues with the shoulder, the supraspinatus from overload, poor posture, things like that is another good one that we might talk about. And yeah, you guys get your favoured injuries up, and we'll dissect them. We'll go deep into them, you know, and talk about them. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Big love to those of you listening on the podcast, Sound of Movement podcast, and also watching the replay on Unity Gym YouTube channel. Remember, if you haven't already, get yourself over to the UMS Movement Mastermind. We go live daily, and you can interact with us and ask us questions, get some free coaching from some great coaches and physiotherapists. And we'll see all of you guys who joined us live today tomorrow.
See you, everyone.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.